They started as throwaway cardboard circles, milk caps, something you'd toss in the trash without a second thought. But in just a few years, kids were swapping them like precious artifacts, and some were trading hands for hundreds of dollars. It didn't make sense. A game meant to be played on the ground during recess had suddenly become a commodity market. The frenzy began quietly in backyards and on sidewalks, but it didn't stay small for long. Collectors emerged. Bidding wars broke out. Suddenly, that scuffed little disc in your shoebox might be worth a small fortune. And then came the sale that changed everything. The day a single slammer, a chunk of molded plastic barely heavier than a coin, reportedly sold for $500. The playground went silent, the rumors started, and the game was never the same again. A single POG, once worth less than a dime, now could cost as much as a gaming console if you had the rarest one. One week, POGs were just a fun way to kill time between classes. The next, they were everything. Friendships were built on trades. Lunchtime became tournament hour. The sound of slammers hitting stacks echoed across playgrounds like a starting gun for battle. Kids skipped homework for strategy sessions. Parents who once thought it was a harmless fad now watch their children's bedrooms fill with binders, crates, and shelves stacked with cardboard trophies. But obsession has a way of changing things. The laughter and lighthearted fun began to warp into something else, a fever. And when parents and teachers realized how deep it had sunk its claws into kids, the mood shifted. In just 12 months, something as simple as milk caps became the most controversial thing in America's playgrounds. The backlash hit like a storm. School after school posted the same notice. POGs are banned. No exceptions. They weren't just being called a distraction, they were being labeled dangerous. The reason? Gambling. The same way poker chips could be stacked, won, and lost, so could POGs. And for some adults, that made them a gateway to bad habits. Teachers confiscated them. Parents tossed entire collections in the trash. The narrative was no longer about a game, but about a moral threat. Kids responded the only way kids know how, by making it more secretive, more forbidden, more exciting. One middle school even banned POGs, calling them a distraction with gambling-like stakes. Kids were now hiding them under their desks like contraband. This wasn't just a game anymore. POGs decided who ruled the playground. That shiny, weighty slammer in your pocket, it could make you untouchable. Lose it, and you might as well fade into the background. Every recess became a silent power struggle. Each stack a gamble that could change a kid's entire standing in the school's social order. Some kids hoarded their collections like a dragon guarding treasure. Others built alliances, lending out prized POGs for favors or protection. And all of it was decided in the heat of a match with a single flick of the wrist. Kids weren't just playing with POGs. They were building entire social hierarchies where a single slammer could make or break your reputation. And the stakes only grew. POGs stopped being just a game and became currency. A rare slammer could buy you a week's worth of snacks, or even a video game if you found the right trade. Recess turned into an open-air market. Deals were whispered, rumors spread about legendary trades, a stack of rare POGs for a bike, a holographic cap for a brand new pair of sneakers. Some kids didn't even play anymore. They just traded, flipping POGs for profit like miniature Wall Street brokers. Teachers didn't see it as entrepreneurial. They saw it as gambling, pure and simple. Some kids were trading rare POGs for bikes or video games, turning playgrounds into miniature stock markets. It all started with a revival in Hawaii. A teacher looking for a fun, low-cost activity reintroduced her students to an old game played with milk caps. No glitz, no marketing, just cardboard circles and a flick of the wrist, but word travels fast. especially when kids are involved. That little game spread from one school to another, then across islands, then onto the mainland. Before anyone could put a name to it, the spark had jumped the ocean. The real shock came when toy stores started selling out. For the first time, POG sales spiked across the nation. Retailers scrambled to restock. Parents were hearing about them on morning shows. And the teacher, she'd accidentally helped kick off one of the biggest playground phenomena in American history. One teacher's classroom idea spiraled into a nationwide cultural phenomenon, and no one saw it coming. The moment POGs went national, the vultures circled. Within 2 years, the game wasn't just a fad, it was a marketing goldmine. Marvel superheroes, Disney princesses, rock bands, even fast food chains jumped on the bandwagon. If it had a logo, it could be slapped on a POG and sold for triple the price. The playground currency was no longer just cardboard, it was branding. Kids didn't just want a slammer, they wanted a Batman slammer. They didn't just want a POG, they wanted one with Mickey's face staring back at them. And when licensed Mickey Mouse POGs appeared, you knew the fad was officially corporate and the magic was fading. The companies didn't just sell POGs, they sold the idea of owning something rare. Limited editions, special holographics, gold foil slammers that only a lucky few could find. They weren't just toys anymore, they were status symbols. Every kid knew that the rarer your POG, the more power you held. It didn't matter how light it was or how well it played in a match. The only thing that mattered was whether your friends had one and whether they wanted yours badly enough to trade for it. The value of a POG didn't come from its weight or size. It came from how few people had it. And then it all came crashing down. POGs had been everywhere, sold in toy stores, cereal boxes, even gas stations. But the flood of product drowned the magic. Too many designs, too many versions. What once felt special now felt cheap. Kids moved on, and the trade slowed, the binders gathered dust, and the companies who thought they'd found an evergreen gold mine watched the numbers drop off a cliff. In the blink of an eye, something that was worth hundreds of dollars became worthless, like watching an empire fall. One year, you couldn't walk across a playground without hearing the clack of a slammer. The next is silence. Was it just oversaturation, or was it something deeper? A shift in culture that left POGs stranded in the past. The truth is, most fads burn hot and die fast. The novelty wears off, and the market collapses under its own weight. But with POGs, it wasn't just a market crash, it was a collective loss of interest that felt almost sudden. One year, everyone wanted them. The next, they were buried at the bottom of toy bins. What happened in between? Time has a strange way of rewriting value. Years later, POGs began surfacing again, not in playgrounds, but in auction houses and online collector groups. That slammer you lost under the couch in 1995, now it might fetch a few $100s if it was one of the rarest. The frenzy was gone, but the scarcity remained. And for the collectors who missed the first wave, or those who never stopped hunting, this was their moment. POGs that cost a few cents are now prized relics, a paradox of lost fame turned into collectible gold. Here's the thing. POGs weren't just a 90s quirk. They were a prototype. Everything that made them work, scarcity, exclusivity, perceived value, is the same playbook fueling today's digital collectibles. The NFT boom, it's the same psychology, just wrapped in blockchain instead of cardboard. But unlike NFTs, POGs had a tangible purpose. You could play with them. And when you strip away the tech jargon, the core idea is identical. Own something rare, watch its value rise, and hope you got in before the bubble bursts. What if the POG craze wasn't a dead fad, but the first NFT? It's all about digital scarcity, after all. For the kids who lived it, POGs weren't just a game. They were a shared language, the thrill of a perfect flick, the pride of winning a stack, the quiet bond of trading with your best friend under the bleachers. These weren't just objects. They were markers of identity, pieces of a childhood you could hold in your hand. Even now, decades later, picking up a POG can send you right back to the blacktop, sun on your neck, slammer in your hand. For kids in the 90s, a POG wasn't just a toy. It was a piece of their childhood identity. The mainstream POG craze had collapsed. Toy aisles were cleared, binders of caps shoved into closets, and the playground stacks gone silent. But in the shadows, a different story was unfolding. A small group of hardcore collectors refused to let it die. They scoured flea markets, garage sales, and dusty corners of comic shops. They traded in whispers, guarding their rare finds like treasure maps. And then, something changed. Those rare POGs started showing up online. Early internet auction boards lit up with bids. Prices climbed into the hundreds for pieces most people thought were worthless. It wasn't a comeback, yet, but it was a pulse. While everyone else moved on, hardcore collectors were quietly betting that POGs would one day rise again. It wasn't the last time the world would see a toy rise and fall like that. Years later, fidget spinners hit the same fever pitch, exploding out of nowhere, dominating playgrounds, offices, and even late-night talk shows. And just as fast as they arrived, they vanished. The patterns were uncanny. The initial rush, the must-have hype, the inevitable oversaturation. And finally, the collective, "We're done with this" moment. Different toy. Same arc, from POGs to fidget spinners. We fall for the same addictive, fleeting obsession every time. Here's what makes POGs special. They went viral before viral was even a word. No hashtags, no TikTok dances, no celebrity endorsements, just kids talking, playing, and trading. The chain reaction was entirely human. A word-of-mouth wildfire that leapt from playground to playground, city to city, without a single dollar spent on advertising at first. And that's why it felt unstoppable. It wasn't a campaign. It was a contagion. Before Instagram, before YouTube, POGs spread like wildfire through playgrounds without a single tweet. The question is, did the companies ruin it? Once the big brands stepped in, everything changed. Licensing deals, mass production, cheap knockoffs, flooding the market. It was no longer about the game. It was about squeezing every possible dollar out of a trend before it died. Maybe it was smart business, or maybe it was a slow act of sabotage. Because the moment kids could get a dozen POGs anywhere, anytime, for pennies, the magic was gone. The POG explosion began organically, but corporations turned it into a gold rush that ultimately killed its own market. Ask any kid from the 90s and they'll tell you the slammer was the crown jewel. Bigger, heavier, cooler. It wasn't just your playing piece. It was your weapon, your identity, your way of saying, "I'm not here to play small." Some were solid metal, others gleamed with holographic foil, and the rarest ones could command gasps the moment you pulled them from your pocket. And here's the thing, winning with a slammer was great, but owning the right slammer, that made you untouchable. The slammer was never just for playing, it was a symbol of power, and it turned kids into rival factions. POGs weren't just about collecting, they were about belonging. They tapped into something primal in youth culture, the need to compete, to show off, to be part of something bigger than yourself. Every trade, every match, every display of your best caps was part of a silent language kids spoke without ever writing the rules. And for those who didn't play, they were outsiders looking in. POGs weren't just toys. They were badges of belonging in a world where fitting in meant everything. It started as pure joy. No stakes, no strategy, just the satisfying clack of cardboard under a slammer and the thrill of flipping a stack. But slowly, the innocence bled out. Trades turned into negotiations, matches became high-pressure events, and the kids with the biggest collections ruled the playground while the rest played with scraps. What was once a shared game became a hierarchy, and for some, the fun was gone forever. What was once a game for everyone quickly became a game only for the rich and powerful. POGs burned bright, collapsed fast, and yet, somehow, never really died. Maybe they were just a game, or maybe they were a mirror showing us how easily value, power, and belonging can be stacked, traded, and lost. If you remember playing POGs or missing out, share your story below. I read every one. And if you want more deep dives into the rise and fall of the icons that shaped our childhoods, hit subscribe, like this video, and join the conversation, because next, we're rewinding to another vanished piece of summer magic. Ice cream trucks, ringing bells, and the empire that defined childhood treats, until it disappeared. That's the story of who killed good humor ice cream.